Hi guys, I'm Emily and this is my YouTube channel Wavy Hair Care, and I also blog at wavyhaircare.com. Today we're going to get into everything you need to know about gel casts or hair casts made from styling products. This is slightly future me. This video got really long and so we're breaking it up into two parts. This first part is going to cover the basics of what a gel cast is, and it's also going to cover, if you get a cast that is too hard, some tips and tricks for scrunching it out, and also some of the reasons why that may be happening to you. If you notice that my hair looks a little different than it does in most of my other videos, that's because this is a gel cast. So if you're not familiar with what a gel cast is, it's basically this like stiff, almost wet looking property that will exist on your hair if you style your hair and use most gels, mousses, custards, other styling products with hold. My hair right now kind of looks wet because it's dark and it has like a little bit of a shine to it, but it's just a gel cast. It's completely dry. Diffused it for like, I don't know, an hour, and so it's pretty stiff right now. And I kind of wanted to show it to you guys because sometimes people think that if there's any part of their hair that is a little bit stiff, that's a gel cast, and that is a little bit of a gel cast. But when you get a gel, like a good gel cast over all of your hair, like all sides of all of your hair will be stiff. Like there won't just be a little stiff piece here, or like the underside won't be soft. Like every angle of every side of all of your hair will be in the gel cast. The reason that a lot of us like to get a gel cast is because when you use gel and get a gel cast, it will do wonders on frizz. It's, in my opinion, the best way to deal with frizz short term. Long term, you might can like help get your hair more hydrated and things like that, but day to day, if you have frizz or breakage, like immediately, the best way to kind of hide it is to use a gel cast. And it gets really good definition and longer lasting hold for a lot of people than if they don't get a gel cast. And so that's kind of the benefit of getting a gel cast, but a lot of people don't like the look of this. And it's completely a stylistic choice. Some people do like it and will just leave their hair like this, and that's completely fine. If you don't like this look, if you want your hair to look softer and to maybe not look like it has gel in it, then we do what we call scrunch out the crunch, which is kind of a silly name. I don't know where it came from, but it's essentially just like squeezing your hair gently, and it will get rid of that firm feeling and that kind of almost wet look that your hair will likely have in a gel cast, but it will maintain some of the frizz control and the definition that you just wouldn't get if you didn't get a gel cast to begin with. So now that I've kind of explained the basics, I'm gonna scrunch out the crunch, get rid of this cast so that you can kind of see that transformation of what it will look like once I scrunch the crunch out. My method for doing this is just my hands. Some people like to use an oil. I think that often is better for high porosity hair. I have low porosity hair, so it's really easy for, and also my hair strands are fine, so it's easy for my hair to get weighed down by oils. And also my hair just isn't dry, so I don't really need an oil to help close moisture into my hair, which is kind of what oils mainly do, is they try to trap moisture in your hair to keep it moisturized between washes. So as you're seeing, I just scrunch and I kind of fluff my roots a little bit. Some people use a hair pick and will bring it in here. I tend to just use my fingers and fluff a little bit. And hopefully you can already start to see how much different this side looks than this side. Like this side is looking less wet, it's looking less stiff. It's just looking a bit less product-y, I guess. And yeah, so I'm gonna go ahead and do the other side. And you can kind of just do this until you feel like your hair is soft. I saw a TikTok the other day where somebody said that they scrunch out the crunch for 2 to 4 minutes. And you're seeing me do this in like full time. I'm not gonna like shorten this or anything. For me, it doesn't take anywhere near that long. But everybody is a little different. It's like endlessly fascinating to me how much hair can vary. And so for some people, their hair will get a really hard cast with not much product, without even like a hard hold gel, and they'll have to really work to get that cast out. My hair is not like that. My hair tends to skew over moisturized, and I have a lot of hair, and so it really takes an insane amount of gel for me to get a cast that's hard to get rid of. But in a minute I'll go over some of the ways that you can work to get a cast out if you do have a really stubborn one that you're struggling to get rid of. But yeah, there's kind of those two different sides of the spectrum. There are people who struggle to get a cast. Sometimes I hear from people who are new to the curly girl method or new to embracing their natural waves in whatever non-curly girl method they prefer. And they say they've never got a cast, or they never got a good cast. And then on the other end of the spectrum, there are people who kind of struggle with getting a cast that's too hard all the time. So I'm going to go over some tips and tricks for coping with all of these problems. Okay, so that feels scrunched out to me. Now that I have scrunched out my cast, you can see that my hair looks kind of bigger. When your hair is in a cast, it's really like tightly holding it in really skinny pieces, and so that's something to be mindful of, is if your gel cast looks really skinny or stringy, don't worry too much until you scrunch out the crunch, because I think for most people's hair, their clumps will appear bigger once the cast is gone. I kind of like to think of a gel cast as essentially capturing your hair's shape that it has when you apply your gel. And I think that's something that is really helpful to keep in mind when you're looking to make a cast, because you want to apply gel when your hair is in the form that you want it to ultimately take on, like long term. And so that would mean that if you've washed your hair and maybe you've plopped or something like that, and you feel like your hair has already fallen really straight, or if it has really, really skinny clumps, then I would halt before adding gel. I would go back and add more water to your hair, because if you apply gel or other stylers with hold to your hair when your hair is in a shape that you don't want to maintain, then it's not going to give you the results that you want, because once you apply your gel, that's the shape you're trying to capture. Or like lock in, maybe, is another way of thinking of it. And so you want decent clump size, and you want your waves or curls to kind of be in the like tightness that you're used to or that you prefer. So like with me, if I were to shower and walk around for 5 minutes and then apply gel without having plopped or something like that, my hair would kind of, the weight of water would get to it, and so it might have some like twists at the end, but this part would be super, super flat. And so I wouldn't want to apply gel then without scrunching or something to kind of help the shape pop back up higher up on my head before I apply my gel. Sometimes in wavy and curly hair groups or on my blog or wherever, I see people ask if they need a gel cast. And all of hair care is basically stylistic preference, so nobody really needs a gel cast, but I assume a lot of time the real question there is, do I need a gel cast to get the results that I want? And my answer to that would be, it depends on your hair type, and it also depends somewhat on the style that you want. Some people, even with loosely wavy hair, have a really durable curl pattern to where they could just use a small amount of a leave-in conditioner, or maybe even nothing as a leave-in, and they would still have defined waves. I am not that person. I don't have that hair type. My hair would be mostly straight, puffy, lumpy, bumpy mess if I don't use something like gel or a mousse, and if I don't use quite a bit of one have to use quite a lot of gel or mousse, and I have to get a cast to really get good definition. My hair just does not stay defined well at all without a styling product, but that's just my hair type. That's not true for other people. So if you basically like the results that you get without a cast, then no, you absolutely don't need a cast. But if you feel like you don't get the definition or the frizz control or the longevity of your style that you want without a gel cast, then yeah, you probably want to mess around with trying to get a gel cast just to see how much that helps with your style goals. For my hair type, I feel like getting a cast is pretty good make or break the good or bad wash day. So for me, I do feel like it's pretty essential, but everybody has a different hair type, everybody has a different styling preference. Some people really struggle with getting rid of a cast, so they get a cast maybe even quite easily, but then it's really stiff and they'll scrunch and scrunch and scrunch and their hair just still feels producty. And there's several things that can cause this, and I just kind of want to go over them. Hopefully, if this is something that you're experiencing, you'll be able to see these possible causes and pick out what is most likely to be the cause for your particular case and can kind of troubleshoot using this information. One of the more common reasons that people will struggle to get rid of a cast is they just use too much gel. If you have fine, low density hair, you're probably a lot more prone to having this happen. Some people don't need to use very much gel at all to coat all of their hair, and if they use too much, their hair will get really stiff, it will be really sticky. Sometimes if people use too much, it'll end up on their scalp, and their scalp will feel bad. So that's one thing. If you're like regularly getting a really hard cast that's really difficult to get rid of, maybe use less gel. So maybe if you're using a $50 amount per section, maybe use a quarter amount per section or something like that, and see if that makes a difference. Another common cause of a cast that is too hard is just using a gel that is harder hold than what you need. My hair type does well with like all the hold possible. I love like mega hard hold gels, but I have a friend who has wavy hair, and if she tries to use like my super hard gels, like even in the tiniest amount, it's like a disaster for her. But she can do really well with some like medium hold gels, where my hair usually doesn't get great results with medium hold. So to some degree, you might just have to figure out how much hold your hair really needs. I think that finer hair is more likely to do well with harder hold. A lot of times fine hair is just kind of like weak and doesn't have as much of its own like backbone to support its shape without assistance from a product with a lot of hold. And kind of on the flip side, like thick, or sometimes we call it coarse, like individual hair strands that are really thick, they do better with more moisture, and they get kind of like dry and stiff and wiry feeling if they have too much of a hard hold gel on them. And so if that's kind of your hair type, you might be able to do more with like a medium hold product. So experiment a little bit with products on both end of the hold spectrum and see what you think works best for you. Sometimes a really hard cast can be a sign of protein overload. I'm always a little hesitant to bring up moisture protein balance because I come across so many people who are like brand new to all of this, and they seem to like default to thinking if something's wrong with my hair, it has to be too much moisture or too much protein. And I think especially if you're new, the odds of those being your problem just aren't as common as if you're, you know, been really into this for a while and doing tons of protein treatments. Then yeah, you might have protein overload or what have you. But so I would caution you to, especially if you're new, don't jump to assuming you have protein overload, but it is definitely something that can cause a really hard cast. Is if you've been using a lot of protein products, usually specifically protein treatments, usually just using like shampoos and conditioners that have protein aren't going to send you into bad protein overload. Sometimes a really hard cast is created if you apply gel to your hair when it's already too dry. I like to shower, plop my hair for about 10 minutes, which is basically wearing a t-shirt on my head to draw out some extra moisture. Then I add my gel, then I diffuse. For my hair type, that works well. After the 10 minutes, my hair still has like a squish sound to it because there's still quite a lot of water in my hair, but it's not dripping wet. For other people, if they wear a t-shirt or towel on their head for 10 minutes, their hair is going to be almost completely dry or a lot drier than mine would be. And so then if they were to add gel at that point where their hair is maybe 50% dry already, that can cause a hard cast. A harder cast than what you would want. So if you've been damp styling and struggling with a really hard cast, then you might try wet styling and making sure your hair is super wet. For some people, I think especially if you have bleached your hair or have heat damage, their hair will dry really, really fast. I've seen people talk about how they don't intentionally do anything to dry their hair, but just in the time that they step out of the shower, put clothes on, their hair is already too dry, and so they will use a like misting bottle or a spray bottle to re-wet their hair before adding their gel, just because it will just dry in like 5 minutes time of getting dressed. So pay attention to how wet your hair is when you're adding your gel. That could be part of why you're getting too hard of a cast. And I also wanted to share a few tricks that you can use if your hair is really in a hard cast and you just cannot seem to get the crunch to go away and you kind of need to fix it today or in the moment. One great tip is to use oil or a leave-in conditioner. A lot of times moisture containing ingredients will kind of work against the cast, and so if you have a hair oil, just use a very small amount, like just 1 drop spread between your hands, and do that as you're scrunching your hair out. Some people do that all the time as a regular routine, but a lot of times that can help soften a really hard cast. Or if you don't have a hair oil or just prefer, you can use a small amount of a leave-in conditioner. Again, just spread it over your hands and then scrunch your hair, and sometimes that conditioner will help kind of erode that cast a little bit. And a final tip is clapping out the crunch. This is one that I know my own hairstylist recommends to some people who have a hard time getting rid of a cast. So in, like, I do this to scrunch. People sometimes clap. And for some reason that like forcing the hair between both hands in more of a like impact type way can do more to get the cast out than gentle squeezing can. I've seen people say that clapping out the crunch can be especially good if you have really small curl clumps that are like just really, I think a lot of times the smaller a clump is, the harder it is to get the cast out. And so some people will scrunch out most of their hair, but then they'll have a couple of really small clumps and they'll clap those ones. So, you can work it into your routine however it seems best for your hair, but that's another trick that some people use. So that's it for part 1. For part 2, come back next week and I'm going to go over why you may have never got a gel cast, why you are struggling to get a gel cast even if you used to be able to get one, and some other like common questions related to gel casts and just troubleshooting gel cast problems.